every single one of those things. Flexibility, control over your schedule, providing feedback to your workplace gives you that sense of pride and gives you that sense of contribution. And I think, every human, regardless of where you work, you want to feel that your work matters, and Deputy Technology is allowing that.
Welcome to the Reboot Chronicles, your gateway to the world's most influential leaders who are rebooting their organizations and themselves to thrive in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean Tobias, CEO who's rebooted dozens of companies, creating billions in value. My passion is uncovering inspiring reboot stories. So buckle up, lean in, and please share this episode with a friend. It may help reboot their career and their life.
From scaling billion-dollar fintechs to championing shift workers across the globe, Silvija Martincevic has made a career out of what I call a top reboot principle, which essentially is that purpose and profit can actually thrive together. Like me, Silvija is a builder who knows how to reboot companies into billion-dollar brands. At a firm, she spearheaded partnerships with big dog brands like Walmart, Amazon, American Airlines, and Target, growing revenue from $100 million to well over $1 billion. In a Groupon, she built their $1 billion international group while simultaneously serving as CMO, pretty impressive, and GM of its health and beauty division. I really admire people who can take on multiple roles, something I did early on, because it essentially prepares you to be a CEO or for whatever's next in your career. And now, as CEO of Deputy, the global leader in smart scheduling workforce management, she's helping hundreds of thousands of businesses and millions of their shift workers in hundreds of countries to reboot everything from communications and scheduling to compliance and culture. Beyond her track record of building and scaling companies, Silvija brings something I believe is missing in many leaders today, a passion and purpose, or a passion really for purpose is probably a better way to put it, with a focus on inspiring teams. Silvija, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Dean.
Yeah, you've got so many reboot principles in your background that you're living every day. We couldn't help but having you on. So it's good to see you here. We've got many things in common. You're an early founder. You've jumped into all different types, so you're almost industry agnostic like I've been. And, as you stepped into these new roles and new disciplines and new industries, we're curious kind of what's driven you. I mean, even beyond building billion-dollar businesses, you're also a champion of financial inclusion, which I like. I think you still serve on the board of Lemonade and Kiva and started Zen Financial for women and minority backed startups. So I'm curious, what makes you tick? What's the foundation of your journey?
What a great opener.
I'll tell you, I worked on that one.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Well, I think when you think about what makes any of us tick, it inevitably goes back to our origin. And I have been incredibly fortunate to grow up in a small village with my parents and my family. Every single one of them were shift workers. And so I have spent, the last 20 years of my career always looking for ways to improve the world for the underserved community. You and I, Dean, we sit in the comfort of our homes, and so does the 20% of workforce who are office workers. But the people that really make it happen are the 80% of workforce who work on their feet. Those are small business owners. Those are shift workers that work in healthcare, in retail, and hospitality. And that's the 80% of world's economy. And so I feel that anything that I do and anything that I've done over the last 20 plus years has been focused on how can I build big businesses, but how can those big businesses also do good in the world? And so that is what makes me tick. It's impact. And absolutely scale as well, because to create an impact, to try to scale that impact, that is really where power and where change in the world happens.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, as CEOs, we're always worried about the month and the quarter and the earnings, and especially when you go public, Lord help you, it's going to be a different world. So to keep that mantra going, it's challenging. And when you think about the new way of work, what's the biggest shift that employers and workers haven't fully figured out yet around the world?
Yeah, I would mention a couple. And, Deputy is a software company that helps small businesses that employ deskless workers. And so we do a lot of research in this space. And here is what we're seeing. Number one, this is the first time that businesses have 5 generations working. And those 5 generations have very different perspectives and different ways of working. And so that is one. We know that Gen Z are more driven from their heart. We know that they are very embracing of technology. And then, you have Gen Xers and boomers that are kind of a little bit more skeptical of some of that. So if you are a business that employs, these different generations, you need to be more thoughtful about how do you create flexibility so that you can retain your workers. And the second thing that we're seeing, we all are living in this age that of AI that's building the greatest transformation that the world has ever seen. And we got to make sure, if you're a business owner, you need to be thinking about how are you not left behind as that transformation is permeating every DNA of our social lives, of our work lives, and of our society. So those are the 2 big things: understanding the generational differences, and then really being thoughtful about impact of AI.
Yeah, many companies struggle with that, from Walmart, as you mentioned, to JP Morgan Chase, who've had 5 or 6 generations. And at one point, JP Morgan just had the silent generation still working there, which actually was before the greatest generation. And they had obviously the greatest generation, then baby boomers. Then they kind of went into mostly now baby boomers and the other 4. But when you stepped into this role, looking at that and looking at your tech stack, because you're a tech person like me, what was your aha moment when you were evaluating this, saying, this is going to change everything? Because most people say, yeah, they're a tech company, whatever, manage hourly workers. I'm like, no, it's bigger than that. What was your big aha?
Here was the big aha. I'm an economist. I started my career as an economist and a data person.
Oh, boy.
Share 2 stats.
Here we go.
That blew my mind. First one, 80% of world's workers are deskless workers who work on their feet. 80%.
Wow.
The second stat.
Did not know that.
Second stat, less than 1% of all investment in tech went into this community. And if that is not a market failure, I don't know what is.
Yeah. And from an opportunist point of view, your TAM, SAM, SOM, your targetable market, holy cow, this sounds like billions and billions of untapped. No?
Trillions, really. When you think about a world's workforce,
there goes your valuation right there.
I think this is a massive opportunity and one that's been deeply underserved. You have 2.7 billion people that work inside hospitals and factories and retail shops, and yet technology has not caught up with it. And so that is what Deputy is trying to change today. Dean, we support 40,000 small businesses all over the world, across 100 countries, and 1.5 million people use Deputy every single day. They use it to help them with their work lives, whether that is, seeing tasks that they need to do, seeing their schedules, swapping their shifts, talking to fellow shift workers. And of course, it helps businesses be more compliant, and it helps businesses retain their workers. We have seen that companies that use Deputy or any other technology that helps them be more connected to their workers, improve their productivity by 50+%, improve their retention by 30 to 70%, depending on the industry. And there is real value in, that connectivity and having technology for people that work on their feet. And that is what we're trying to solve.
Yeah, we try not to get too geeky on the show and dive into the product and the tech stack. And I usually fail at that and dive into it anyway. But so outside of that, efficiency and productivity and blah, blah, blah. What about things like dignity and culture? And how do you help people feel better about what they're doing?
if we just go back to the human experience, we as humans, what really drives us is we want to feel helpful, right? We want to feel helpful, and we want to feel that whatever we do is impactful. And so when you think about, a day of a nurse that works in an elderly home, or a day in the hands of shift worker like my mom. My mom sewed shoes in a shoe factory. When you think about those workers, just like people that work in the office, they want to feel that their work matters. They want to feel that what they do every day is appreciated. And generally, for those workers, and again, I grew up with my mom working crazy shifts, not knowing, what her schedule is going to look like, not knowing when she can take leave, not knowing, what will show up for her that day at work. It takes away that pride. It does take away dignity, and deputy is helping with that. So if you are, a shoe factory worker, or if you are a nurse, you get your schedule in the palm of your hand. You know what's expected of you. You also can communicate with your bosses. You can communicate with your colleagues. You know what good looks like. Businesses can now do employee of the month. They can provide, different appreciation through the mobile app. When workers are clocking in and out, Dean, today, for most deputy businesses, those business owners have the opportunity when they're clocking out to ask, hey, how was your shift? How would you rate your shift today? Do you have any feedback for us, business owners? And so those are some of the ways that technology is bringing transparency. It's bringing flexibility. Workers can be more in control of their schedule. They can swap shifts with each other. And they can provide feedback to their businesses on what's working, what's not working, and every single one of those things. Flexibility, control over your schedule, providing feedback to your workplace gives you that sense of pride and gives you that sense of contribution. And I think, every human, regardless of where you work, you want to feel that your work matters, and deputy technology is allowing that.
I guess I'm getting a sense why they chose you versus your typical tech guy to be the CEO. Kind of grounded in this. But where did you grow up? Where did your mom work? What area? Where were you guys?
Yeah. So I grew up in Eastern Europe in the 80s and 90s in a small community in the middle of nowhere in Croatia.
Oh, in Croatia. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. And every single one of my family members worked in a local factory. That was a shoe factory that sewed, shoes for different European brands. And so I grew up with watching my cousins, my aunts, my grandmas, my mom working at this factory, and sometimes bringing home shoes. I myself have learned how to sew some of those shoes, in order for my mom to hit her quotas. And listen, I think what it gave me, what it taught me, is that any work that you do is important work.
Yeah,
that all of us should be proud of the work that we do, and every work is important. And I feel so incredibly fortunate that I sit in the seat today, running a global software company that's thinking about how can we make this work, deskless work, for 80% of workforce that works on their feet. How could we make it more meaningful, more fair, and more flexible, and certainly more productive?
Yeah, and you're also figuring out how to scale the company faster. One of the reboot principles is the power of partnerships, massive partnerships. You're doing many of them. You're announcing, I think you did one with Paycor. What kind of partnerships are you doing? What can people learn from that to accelerate their own businesses?
Yeah, I think as we are thinking about how to scale our business at Deputy, and one way to scale is to expand globally. And Deputy today, is our technology is used from Sydney to London. to San Francisco. We operate in all three geos, in Europe, in Australia, and in US. And we look at how can we scale our business by adding new products, which we have done. We have built many new products over the last year, and Deputy Analytics that helps small businesses understand their labor costs, Deputy Messaging that helps shift workers communicate with each other. But we also are thoughtful about things that we're not going to build. And one of those was payroll in the United States. And we asked ourselves, well, who are the top payroll companies that we admire who have very similar cultural DNA to us? And Paycor and Paychex brands, together, they are one of the largest payroll businesses on the planet. They work in this ecosystem of small and mid-sized businesses in the US. And, we just felt that this was such a wonderful opportunity to marry their world-class scale. They work with hundreds of thousands of small businesses all over US, and to marry our wonderful technology, workforce management. And so Paycor and Paychex partnership allows us to sell their payroll technology to our customers, and it allows them to sell our workforce management and integrate our workforce management into the small business ecosystem that they own. And so I feel like the best partnerships, Neil, are those where there is a win-win. But what's also important, I want to caution people when they go into partnerships. It's not just about the dollar signs. There has to be a cultural alignment because it is a little bit of a marriage. You are marrying.
A little, oh boy, a lot.
You're marrying the way that you work, the way that you make decisions. The way that you're going to resolve problems. So it is important to solve for that and see that cultural alignment up front.
Yeah, it also forces you, which you've rightly done, to not get into something. Like to jump into payroll would not have been a good idea. There's way too many people slugging it out in that category. So
exactly.
Yeah, a lot of partnerships, it's really like the how and the why. And then culturally, it's the, okay, now let's get it done type of thing. When you look at it made me think about when you start rattling off countries, something like if you look at India and the number of workers there, billions, our population at least. And you look at, it's a mixture, the white collar, blue collar, let's just call it that for now, or shift versus non-shift. Some of them have desks. When you look at your expansion plans and where you could go, does it really have to just be the hourly undesked? We're looking out a few years here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big world out there. And, one way the Deputy has grown very thoughtfully is through creating the most simpler technology for people that are on the go. So when you look at Deputy, our NPS is up there with Google and Apple. Our product is beloved because of simplicity of our user interface. And so today, I mentioned that we operate across 100 countries, not because we have salespeople there, but because people find us because of the power of our brand and because of the simplicity of our technology. We have customers from South Africa to Canada to Spain because small businesses find us on Google and ChatGPT, and it's very easy to deploy Deputy technology. You just download, it's a mobile app. We're a mobile SaaS company. You download a mobile application, and then we very seamlessly walk you through how to use it. And you literally can go today, where you're doing everything manually, in a matter of 30 minutes, your whole shift workforce is digitized. So we are very focused on continuing to create whatever technology we create, that it's very easy and simple to use. Anyone can pick it up and use it.
When you look at the macroeconomic markets, I should pick a country, but I won't. What advice do you give younger folks coming out into the workforce about, especially the ones that might be shunning shift work, or they're trying to get white collar, but they're going to end up in shift for a while, which is a natural evolution. McDonald's jobs were not meant to just be careers. Then eventually they became careers for certain people. But, there's that early stage in their career, but it is kind of a mentality that is shifting. So what kind of advice would you give people that are, looking for the what they should be doing when they're either coming out of high school or out of college?
Yeah. You know, I'll share some research first. Gen Z, this is the one of the youngest generations of workers. Last year, more Gen Z went into trades than at any other point in the history. In fact, there's this moniker now, the Gen
Great
Z,
trend.
the tool belt generation. I think young people are figuring it out. They're realizing for some of them that college is too expensive. They have seen, Gen Xers and millennials really struggle with college debt and not getting the kind of returns that they thought they would. And so I would say young people are smart already, and they're absolutely realizing that there's a lot of wealth creation in the non-traditional, let's call them blue collar jobs already. But now, on top of that, you have this AI, let's call it the tsunami of AI that's changing everything. And so, what I would say, young people that will do the best are the self motivated self learners, the curious folks that want to use this technology and want to learn how it can help them. And we did this interesting research recently, and we found that we did about 1,500 shift workers across the world. We interviewed them and asked, how do they feel about AI? 94% of them, 96% of them said that they're satisfied with the benefits of AI. These are frontline workers. 96% of them said that they're satisfied with the benefits of AI. What does that mean? They're already using it, they're experimenting with it. And some of them have told us, well, AI is my coach. That's like who's telling me about how I should navigate my career. And so I think the self-starters, the self-learners, and the curious will benefit a lot.
So, Silvia, I think that same survey said 17% of those employees say that their employer is not necessarily transparent about the effects of AI on their role. I don't know. That's a pretty remarkable stat. So there might be some interpretation there. But what's going on with that AI and trust and shift?
So here is what's important to note. Shift work, there will be no problem of AI adoption among shift workers. We do not see an adoption gap. What we do see is a trust gap. Workers are telling us that some businesses are not being transparent and explicit about how they're using AI. And why is this important? Well, if you want to drive better outcomes,
Yeah.
it's all about data and usage. So you need your workers to use it. And you need your workers to be bought in. So I think that is critical. So we are advising our businesses that we support with our AI agents to be very upfront about how AI is being used, and because you want workers to be bought in. So again, I don't think there will be an adoption gap. I think workers are using AI in their daily lives already. They're seeing the benefits. But they are asking for more transparency from their workplaces.
Yeah, and most of the coverage is the big dog companies or the consultants, and now they have 40,000 agents and all this nonsense. There's not a lot of talk about, hey, what's the HVAC guy in Denver using this for, or using your platform for? There's also a dichotomy of, so the episode before you is going to be one of the top officers at Grainger. So their shift workers are walking around with a tablet. Of course, they can have AI embedded into that. The line person at Chipotle probably can't be looking at his phone. And a lot of these employers probably don't want them looking at their phone, even though they are using your tools. So how do we manage that? Because you need to use a device which necessarily isn't part of your job.
I think it depends on industry by industry. We're finding, I'll share a couple of stats on what we're seeing in different industries but that give us great confidence. So in healthcare, for example, so if you're a nurse working in a hospital or elderly care center, we're finding that nurses are primarily using AI for administrative tasks, freeing them to really focus on patients. So that is what we're seeing. You would use AI, after your patient visit, after you've done, the human touch stuff.
Right.
So, and nurses are telling us, we ask them if they're afraid that AI is going to take over their jobs. 99% of nurses said, no, human touch is essential. 99% of them said, we are not worried about, AI taking our jobs. And so I think there's a real integration of the humanity and empathy, but also technology, because you don't need to now spend time on typing notes, and you don't need to spend time on recording data and looking at different, patient chart. Everything is there in the palm of your hand, and then you compare that to food service. They're actually most satisfied. Food service workers are most satisfied with AI. 47% of them say it helps, but of course, they're not going to be using it when they're serving customers, but they're using it, for schedules, for time tracking, for compliance. But just like nurses, 97% of food service workers said that personal interaction and human touch is critical, and they're not afraid of AI taking their jobs. So, yeah.
You guys announced something. I was just looking up here. Shift Worker Sunday. What is that?
Yeah. So we have now just celebrated.
Isn't that the day off usually?
Shift Worker Sunday is the Sunday between Black Friday and Cyber Monday. It is that Sunday that's sandwiched in between, the most chaotic shopping period that shift workers have. And so, while the rest of us are buying and having fun, it is shift workers that are keeping the world going. And so Deputy has founded this holiday to celebrate people that keep the world running, to celebrate the frontline workers. And so it's called Shift Worker Sunday. We just celebrated our 4th Shift Worker Sunday, and we celebrated with all of our customers, from, Ace Hardware in Chicago, to Dutch Bros, a wonderful coffee franchise up and down the East Coast. So there's many, many customers that join us in this celebration of their workers.
So tell me about agents replacing line workers, augmenting them. There's a lot of debate here.
There is a lot of debate, but here is what we're seeing both from businesses and from workers. Both of them view AI as a tool to support employees, not to replace them. Because when you think about who are the workers, they're the nurses, they're the food service workers. Robots are not going to be doing our plumbing anytime soon. So businesses and workers see AI as a tool to support employees, not to replace them. And so what I would say, what is important is that businesses are transparent about how AI is being used, that they provide proper training to workers, and to involve workers when they're rolling it out. And at the end of the day, the way that I see how AI will penetrate shift work industries, I think that AI is going to handle repetitive tasks so that people can focus on what humans do best, which is connecting with patients, connecting with customers, and connecting with each other. And that's a good thing. This integration of the human touch and the technology that helps with repetitive administrative tasks.
Yeah, I know more about robotics than you probably want to hear. So we'll debate that sometime. We're probably going to have some of the big dogs of robotics on soon, and that evolution will be interesting. Let's shift back to you though, and some advice for people that want to be you. I coach a lot of people about how to be a next gen leader, or speak about it to larger groups. But when someone says, love what Silvija did, rebooted her career many times, what kind of advice would you give folks that want to grow up and be you? Everything from, how do you select? How do you know when to join? How do you know when to leave? Sometimes you have to have this arc where where you're coming in, you're rebooting something, and maybe then it's time to go do the next thing. Many people stay too long, all types of tidbits. But yeah, what are your top lessons?
Well, there is a few. Dean, number one thing that I would say, I never had some grand plan. And young people that are finishing high school or college right now, there's no such thing as a grand plan of, I want to get to X. Please release yourself of that stress and anxiety.
Release the stress. They all want the grand plan. This is why I asked. Thank you for clearing that up.
There's no such thing. Just throw that away. But here is what I think helps. Try to figure out a way of how you can serve others. Try to find how you can help your boss, how you can help your colleague. Uh, I have always looked, how can I help someone be better at their job, which helps me develop leadership skills, helps me learn how others are doing their job. And so that's one, be in the service of others. It's really not about you and you getting to the CEO job. It is never been about that. It's about
not about you.
Can you help? Can you jump in and help a customer that has an issue? Can you just absolutely delight them with your knowledge, with your helpfulness? Again, whether it's a customer, whether it's your boss, whether it's your colleague. So that's number one. Number two, thirst for learning. Go learn. I mentioned that I'm a recovering economist. In my early 20s, I was just sitting, in the back of a Chicago Stock Exchange. That is where my career started, Dean. And I was crunching numbers all day long. And one day, a mentor...
LaSalle Avenue, Chicago, yes.
That is in, my friend, LaSalle Avenue. And one day, a mentor of mine, who was the CEO of this brokerage company, came to me and he said, Silvija, you do really great research. I'm like, oh, thanks. Gee, thanks. He said, but nobody can explain it. Our salespeople don't know how to explain it to clients. So I have an idea. Why don't you become a salesperson? And I'm like, I'm an economist. I'm a data person. How could I possibly talk to clients? But I did it because somebody who believed in me said, no, you're going to be good at it. And so I went from being an economist to becoming a salesperson, selling the research I was doing. And I got to tell you, that was the most impactful springboard in my career because I realized if you put yourself up there, there's nothing you cannot learn. And so I would tell young people, go position yourself where you can learn new things. There is always something that you're going to do for the first time. Same when I was a Groupon, the CEO, the wonderful Eric Lipkovsky, said, why don't you go and be CMO? I'm like, but I've never done marketing. He's like, awesome. You'll do a great job. I believe in you. And so I feel like taking those opportunities when they come, and boy, oh boy, is it scary. Is it scary to go, as a data person, to go sell and talk to people? Was it scary to move my family to London, and do marketing when I didn't necessarily, spend a career doing that? But that's the second lesson. Go do things that scare you and learn new skills. And inevitably, when I look at my career, it was just a fortuitous concoction of different jobs I just jumped at that I thought I was not good enough to do. But I still did them anyways. And it brought me here. So I hope that's helpful.
It's very helpful. And you also hit one of the other principles I brought up earlier, which is do 3 or 4 roles at once. I advise people to do this all the time. All the people that work on the Reboot podcast or the Reboot fellows, they're doing 2 or 3 careers at once. And you are not afraid to do it. Most people are afraid to do it. Most people are definitely afraid to go talk to customers. That never hurts, even if it's not going to be your career track. And we have this saying at Kellogg, never leave serendipity to chance. Well, it's like Eric needed a CMO at the time, and you could have said no, and it would have changed your whole trajectory. Not to mention you were doing 2 other jobs there. So, yeah, it meets the prepared mind sometimes, but also just meets the risk taker. Just try it. What's the worst thing that can happen? I could get fired. Okay, fine. So that's the worst thing. You're not going to die. Yeah. Oh, great story, Silvija. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You've been listening to Silvija Martincevic. This is Dean DeBias with the Reboot Chronicles. Please subscribe wherever you get podcasts or at rebootchronicles.com.